Hello, BookTube. Well, it's what I used to refer to as a bleak and barren Sunday here at Hyde Cottage. That was my term for a long time on BookTube for Sundays because I got no mail. There are no free books in the mail on Sunday, and I don't really think of Sundays that way anymore because now on this channel, Sunday is when we do our read-alongs, and we're going to do a read-along forever. We're always going to have a read-along going on. So Sundays actually are fun now, but I still like to do a tag. I used to do tags to console myself on a bleak and barren Sunday, and I still like to do that. And I have a tag. It's an original tag, and I was tagged by the creator. It's the Under the Influence book tag. It was made by Olive at ABookOlive, and it's all about the influence that BookTube has had on you, the influence maybe that you've had on BookTube, and it's an extremely analytical tag. it is the closest that Olive has come yet to just going ahead and making a Myers-Briggs book tag. I don't rule it out. The day is still young. She could easily still do that. But in the meantime, this is an extremely analytic book tag. It is invigoratingly intelligent. I hope that everybody does it. Lots and lots of people have been tagged. I want to tag a lot more people, and I just hope that it goes viral because it gets to the heart of what we do. And question number one is, what's a fantastic book you read on the recommendation of another booktuber? And the corollary is, what's a book you were talked out of reading because of a booktuber's review? The first one, what's a fantastic book you read on the recommendation of another booktuber? That happens quite often to me, where a booktuber will hold up a book and say, boy, oh boy, was this good, or they'll put a picture of it on Instagram, or months after they've read it, they'll say, that's still sticking in my mind. Boy, I love that book. And it doesn't matter to me at the time whether I've read it, whether I have a settled opinion about it, because it's all about the people for me. I'm watching hundreds of BookTube channels regularly, and over that much time you watch these videos of people, you start to know them, at least the little bit that they show on camera. You start to know something of their reading taste, something of their critical assessment abilities, that sort of thing. I know it's vogue on BookTube, on YouTube. It always has been vogue for creators to say, you don't know me. You know only a tiny fraction of my life, the part that I edit and show to you, but you don't know any of the rest. And that's true. That's true for a huge number of YouTubers whose actual reality life is not only very different from the one they show on camera, but a complete black and white contradiction of the one they show on camera. I don't think that's quite as true on BookTube. I have the strong impression when I watch a lot of booktubers I've been watching for many, 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 many videos, I get the strong impression that I know a lot about what they're like in real life. And of course, on this channel, there is no difference between me with the camera on and me with the camera off. None. Those of you who've come to visit find the same Steve that you find on camera. But nevertheless, after that much time watching someone, I get the impression that I know a lot of. I certainly know them as a reader. So if they hold up a book and say, I really, really love this, or 6 or 8 months later they say, I'm still thinking of that book. It's still, if it comes up in a tag, for instance, tags are a great thing for making us go back to the books that stick in our mind. Then I will see it, and I have very often in the last 2 years given a book a second read based on that. The other question, what's a book you were talked out of reading because of a booktuber's review? That has never happened. I don't see any way to justify it. The only way that would be an important service for anybody else, for all the rest of you, would be if your reading time was extremely circumscribed. Right? If you're a slow reader, a ruminative reader, if you've got school, or a job, or 2 jobs, or a family, or children, or anything like that, if you have maybe other hobbies, then you're going to be guarding your reading time. That's what reviews are all about. At least my patch of reviewing is all about safeguarding your reading time. Issuing warnings, issuing careful, selective encouragements, that sort of thing, so that you don't waste what is a very precious commodity for you. But if you've been watching this channel, especially those of you who've been along for the whole grueling haul of it, you know perfectly well that isn't true for me. My life is my reading time. So I read extremely fast, and I read for huge chunks of every day. 150 pages an hour on average for an average of 8 hours a day. Now keep in mind, when I say an average of 8 hours a day, that means that it's often 10 hours a day, which is 1,500 pages. And sometimes, at least a couple of times a week, it's 16 hours in a day. That's an enormous amount of reading. So I don't have the rationale to watch someone hold up a book and give it a bad review and say, well, they've spared me the time. I want to find out for myself. I have the time. Question number 2, has a BookTube opened your eyes or changed your mind about any genre? It has. About one genre above all, believe it or not, that genre is YA, young adult fiction. When I came to BookTube, same as everybody else, I was bombarded with fully grown, shaving, bourbon binging, belching, voting adults who read nothing but children's books, where they read YA nonstop. And they didn't just read YA, they read it as a young adult. Their videos would not only be constantly holding up the latest, The Court of Thorns and Roses, but also talking about which boys they found dreamy and which ones they thought were, oh, so icky. I can't believe I'm attracted to him when he's so mean. And so that so in those early videos, I was watching the video and I was thinking, I would periodically turn the sound off and just look at this fully grown adult who's already cheated on the significant other, who's already stolen money from their work. They're not little kids. They're not little 13-year-olds at all, and yet constantly acting that way, talking like little children. I have many, many examples. They confused and then outraged me, and I admit they created a backlash reaction in me for a while against YA, which was crazy because I had loved some YA before I had ever heard of BookTube. And then I came to BookTube and saw it fetishized and reacted against it when I should have been only saving my reactions for BookTube and only those BookTubers. And that reaction washed away. It balanced out again. And I went back to YA, and specifically the new generation of YA that is the only thing that 90% of BookTube still talks about. And most of it's garbage, but quite a bit of it wasn't. Quite a bit of it I liked in one way or another. It's definitely YA as a genre. Question number 3. How much time did you spend on YouTube before BookTube? And how much time do you spend on it now? And I think the gist of people's answers here is that they spend a lot more time on YouTube now that they have BookTube to watch. And I do too. But I don't know if that's a function of BookTube. I'm not sure that time wouldn't have increased anyway as YouTube became bigger and more ubiquitous and had more and more stuff on it. I remember when YouTube was barren, when there was nothing on it at all. And that we have all watched as it has grown and multiplied exponentially, so that I'm not 100% sure. I know for sure, I suppose that my reading would be increased a bit, because it's not, when I'm watching BookTube, I'm not watching YouTube, I'm watching people I know. Again, I'm watching friends. I'm checking in with people. I'm saying, okay, well, I last left you. It was murderously hot in your London living room, and you didn't have air conditioning. You were trying to cope, and you were looking for the end of the heat wave, but you were still managing to read some books, and you were complaining about this or that, or I'm watching you, and you have a fox in your garden or something like that, and I want to check in. You make another video. I want to see how things are going. I don't know that I view that as quite YouTube. YouTube I watch for Loch Ness Monster videos and stuff like that. But BookTube I watch for people. I watch for community. People that I think if we all gather together in some sort of hall where I wasn't banned, where I wouldn't have been flagged by security at the door, like at every Y'all Fest, like at BookNet Fest, or a million other places where I am still Satan incarnate. If we were to have a gathering where all were welcome, I think I would just be sitting down and talking with these people, and it wouldn't be that different from my interaction with their videos. So if my viewing of YouTube has gone up since I discovered BookTube, it's for personal reasons rather than entertainment or titillation reasons. Question number 4, how many books did you read per month or year before BookTube, and how many do you read now? I read a very large number of books per year, and BookTube has had no effect on it whatsoever. I was shooting for gold in that annual total before BookTube, and I would like to continue to shoot for gold. And my numbers in that annual total have indeed gone up in the last 6, 7, 8 years, but not because of BookTube, only because I've systematically dropped away all other aspects of my life. I used to work 8 hours a day with pants on. I don't do that anymore. So I have pretty much all of my time, except for Frida time. I have all of my time devoted to reading. So that annual number has gone up. I'm hoping that it will go up, inch up a little more this year. I'm well on track. But it has nothing to do with BookTube, unfortunately. Question number 5. Has BookTube affected your book buying habits? And if so, are you pleased or displeased by this? And you could just hear Olive in this question. And if so, are you pleased or displeased by this? And if it's pleased, by what fragment, in which quadrant? And if it's displeased, then is it a corresponding fragment, and in which quadrant? It's always a telltale sign when a book tag is made by a mentat. but in answer to the question, I only have my same answer whenever a variation on this question comes up, which is buy? People buy books? How barbaric. Question number 6. Has a review by a booktuber ever retroactively made you consider your stance on a book? Again, a little touchy. No. No review by a booktuber ever has done that. But, as I mentioned, appreciations, visceral reactions, personal reactions to a book have indeed made me done that. Where I've read a book and I think, okay, that's programmatic garbage and it's obviously pandering to this, that, and the other group. I know what it is. It had no literary merit, and I know what it's trying to do. I've read it. I now know about it. I can pretty much move on. And then months will pass, or a year will pass, and I will see a booktuber. I have come to, there are probably 400 booktubers where when I start one of their videos, I've got a smile on my face because I feel like I'm visiting with someone I know. And if one of those people holds up that book and says, boy, oh boy, I just read it, and it just worked on me so much, especially such and such a character or such and such a theme. So not an actual review, just a reaction, a personal reaction. When that happens, I often will revisit the book. And sometimes it's been worth it. Sometimes I've come away with a better appreciation of the book. So that's valuable, extremely valuable. Question number 7. Are there any videos you've been inspired to make after seeing another booktuber's? Have you ever felt inspired by another booktuber's style, their video style, their book organization, their personal style? And in terms of the first part of the question, I have often been inspired to make a video by other booktubers. Sean the Book Maniac, once upon a time, did one of his great all-purpose tags, where the BookTube parasite tag, where you latch onto the content that someone has just put out and sort of respond to it. And I don't think I've ever officially named a tag that, but I do that all the time. If somebody comes out with a video, whether it's something I agree with or something I want to add to or something I disagree with, I'll often make a response video. I think I'd like to do more of that. I just don't know. Whenever I feel like doing it, I always wonder, okay, is this going to seem like piling on? Or is it going to put the person on the spot? Is it going to make them nervous? The last thing I want to do is make somebody feel like I'm picking on them, even to agree with them. And I don't know. I had there's a new booktuber who I know who pointed out to me, I think on Skype just last week. He said the thing that's odd about your responses to other videos is that you don't think at all how weird. You don't think it. Oh, I forgot exactly how he put it. He said you don't think at all how weird it would be, how weird it is for a booktuber with 130 subscribers to get an enthusiastic, long response from a booktuber with thousands of subscribers. That it when you're new, that is a weird experience. I hadn't thought of that, and again, I wish that we didn't know our subscriber numbers. I wish that were just information buried in the code of BookTube and that we never know it. I don't think you need to know it. You will know whether or not you are making a successful quote-unquote BookTube channel by your comments alone, not by likes and dislikes and not by subscriber, just by your comments. If you have an active comments field, you are making a successful channel. You are creating a book community. But one way or another, I never know quite how to do that. I would love to do more of it. There isn't a day that goes by when I don't see a BookTube video that I would love to respond to. And I should make a mental note to do that more often, at least with the people I know will take it well. There are plenty of those. I could restrict myself to them. But in terms of inspired by a booktuber's video style, No, I don't have any video making ability, so there's no way to do that. The only thing that would come close is the fine-tuning of my background. I finally just decided, why not have the very best looking background that I can have? That's about all I can do in terms of editing. So, a wall of books is a better background than an empty fireplace or hanging scissors or a blank wall. And it's just as convenient. It doesn't matter to me. So that's about the only decision I made. And I don't think I was inspired by any particular booktuber. I was inspired by looking at my own videos that, I know perfectly well from my own experience. When you're looking at a video, no matter how interesting the person is, your eyes do want to look at other things. They want to wander and they want things to look at. So, but in terms of being inspired by another booktuber's personal style, BookTube, there's no improving on this. Okay? I am fierce, fat, and fly. Okay? I have the skills to pay the bills. Question number 8. What are some pressures you feel on your reading life because of your channel? Not a single one. Question number 9. In what way, if any, do you feel the social elements of the community have affected your reading? Do you think about books differently since joining? The second question, do I think about books differently since joining BookTube? No. No. Unlike perhaps the majority of people on BookTube, I have been reading, critically assessing, and critically discussing books for a very, very long time, long before BookTube. So those habits, I hope, those skills, certainly that open-mindedness was all in place before BookTube, and BookTube hasn't changed it. But the first part, in what ways do you feel that the social elements of the community have affected your reading? I've already sort of hinted at that in my earlier answers. I do feel now connected to this community. It feels wonderful. It's an absolutely wonderful feeling. It's an intangible that I don't think a lot of other BookTube or YouTube communities actually have. I really don't. The connection I feel here is it's hard to describe. It's hard to quantify. But it does affect my reading, not in any critical way, but just in a sense I don't feel quite so alone when I read. It used to be that when I read a book for decades and decades, I didn't feel exactly alone. There was my own reactions, and then as I was reading, I was thinking of other book critics that I know and other bookish people that I know in my life. And then as time went on, I started also to think of an audience. I would read a book and I'd be thinking of those other reading friends, but I'd also be thinking, okay, how would I present this book to an audience? What would be the most interesting or entertaining or offbeat way to present this book to an audience? But that's not the same thing. That's not the same thing as this community, as this just a big reading group of people. And that does affect my reading. I'll be reading a book and I'll be thinking, oh, this is an element that reminds me of so-and-so, or, oh, that's an element so-and-so would really like. And it's the so-and-sos now are not just a small number of the same book critics or bookish friends. Instead, it's a wide variety, all of you out there, all over the world. That's just wonderful. And that has affected it for the better. It invests every bit of reading that I do now with a greater sense of community. Because it's not just that I'm responsible now to a reading public, it's also that I'm not responsible, but that I'm happily going to embrace talking about a lot of these books to you directly, right here. That's a great feeling. Question number 10. What influence do you hope your own channel will have on the BookTube community and or aspiring booktubers? Well, this is multifaceted. This is multifaceted. One effect that I wish that my own channel would have on the broader BookTube community, it steadfastly has not had, which is a slight bit of chastisement. Shortly after I joined BookTube, I was pilloried on social media for a trifling offense that doesn't speak to the heart of me, certainly doesn't speak to this channel. There are still people who think that about me. There are still people who have organized. It would be nice if the broader community of BookTube reversed that, apologized for that. It'll never happen, of course, in the 21st century. But if they're not going to do that, it would be nice if the broader, I want to say holier than thou section of BookTube, would at least acknowledge that that's the kind of community they have built, where they can attack and ostracize someone at will and feel no remorse, just move on to the next victim. That's never going to happen. No. So in terms of things that will happen, one of the effects that I would like to have on the broader BookTube community is one that I think you can see already, which is greater critical discourse. Maybe not so much reading with your lymph nodes. Maybe a little bit more reading with your mind. Maybe a little bit more taking a book and reading more than, noticing more than just whether or not a character is from the same city that you are, has the same birth defect that you do, the same skin color as you do. That maybe noticing more than that, maybe going deeper than whether or not you like the book, to assess it better, to move a little bit more towards the critical camp of reading. That's already happening all over BookTube, because as BookTube gets more varied, it's going to attract readers like that. People who aren't reading books quite so much in a YA vein. Not just the type of books they read, but the way they read. I would like it if I could be part of that, but I think a lot of us are. I think that's this whole idea of BookTube 2.0 is a more varied and more mature reading audience. Something that more accurately reflects the incredible diversity of readers that are out there. If I can be a part of that, that would be great. And in terms of the effect, the influence that I would have on aspiring booktubers, well, I've said it before. I've made my preferences clear. I guess we'll call them preferences. They were just recently beautifully lampooned on the Poptimist channel. If you're an aspiring booktuber, this is what I would like to influence you to do. Turn on the camera and talk to me. Don't bounce around. Don't refer to yourself in the third person. Don't read a script. Don't engage in canned patter. Don't gimmick up your channel. This is not the beginning of your broadcasting career. This is a conversation between you and another person. So the people who view their channel as, the beginning of their broadcasting career. Hello, I'm Joe Blow, and welcome back to the Joe Blow Show. Well, I'm your host, Joe Blow. Yeah, no, it's your channel. You're not hosting a thing that's going to live when you're gone. This is not the beginning of your multimedia empire. This is just a channel. Simply get in front of the camera and talk. Doesn't have to be about books. Books can be a frequent thing that you hinge back upon. Books can be a constant refrain. It can be about anything. But the influence I would like to have is towards the more genuine. Let's create a channel, a world here. We already have. It doesn't need my influence. It's the world that I like. The part of BookTube that I like is the part that feels completely real, completely intimate, completely friendly, completely direct, so that you're not referring to yourself in the third person. You're not encouraging your fam to join some sort of contest. You're not doing anything like that. Instead, you're just talking to me about what you think about books or anything else. That is an influence I would love to help strengthen on BookTube. It's already there, and I think a lot of people like it. I think a lot of people who come to BookTube new and see the one kind of video, the flashing fairy lights, the jump cut edits, the spastic behavior, and then the other kind of YouTube where people just talk to the camera. I think most people that encounter those two like the second kind more than the first kind. They only subscribed in their thousands and thousands to the first kind because at the time it was the only thing they had. One way or another, that's the influence that I would like. And that wraps up the Under the Influence book tag, with the only thing left being who you tag. And I'm going to tag a bunch of people in the information section down below. I'm not gonna. Mark at Richardson Reads made a great point in a video of his just recently, where he said that when he tags people in the video, off the top of his head, he ends up tagging the same people, the first names that come to your mind, and he doesn't always want to do that, and I don't either. So I'd like to with tags. I would like to really start only tagging people in the comments section, so that. I'll link to their channel so they know they're tagged, but not doing it off the top of my head in a video, because that causes a feeling of kind of a closed loop, and I don't want that. I want to be constantly reaching out to people. But anyway, that is the Under the Influence book tag. I hope you all do it. It was absolutely wonderful to think about these questions, and I want to thank Olive for tagging me. That was very nice. So I'm going to wrap this up for now on a not quite bleak and barren Sunday, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.